All right, once again, I don't have a line reference. So once again, I would look at the next question to see if I get any line references. And sure enough, this is an evidence pair. So these line references in 17 are going to help me find the answer to 16. Notice too that the line references in 17 are kind of all over the place. We're jumping around this passage, the very beginning, the very end. This is another case where I might use the chronology rule to help me a little bit. So if I look, let's zoom out, if I look at the questions that are near this one, right before 16 and 17, the line reference was 43 to 53. And right after question 17, the line reference is 74. So that tells me, by the chronology rule, it's unlikely that choices A and B and technically even C, because 40 to 42 is right before this line reference, but honestly, I just don't really know. Like, that's close enough that I might still think it would fit in with the chronology. It's right on the cusp. But based on the chronology rule, it's looking really strong that D is going to be the answer. Now, as we saw in an earlier evidence pair in this section, the chronology rule can be broken. This is a guide, but it's not a hard and fast rule. So I wouldn't just pick D and move on. I would actually do the work and try to prove it. But if I get D, I feel a lot better about my answer because it follows the rules of the SAT much more closely. So it's kind of another reason to feel confident in yourself. So let's take a look. We need to make sure we know what we're looking for. The authors indicate that the public is coming to believe that journalists' reports should avoid. So the reports should avoid something, and it's specifically the public's view. So those are helpful ideas to help me with this question. So let's start with 12 to 16. Zoom in a little bit. That would be here. Thus, in contrast to personal or private knowledge, which is generally left to individuals to pursue or ignore, public knowledge is promoted even to those who might not think it matters to them. Okay, well, I don't see anything about what reports should avoid here. So they're talking about public, they're using that word a lot. It doesn't say what anyone should avoid, it says what's promoted. So that's not quite the same thing. So as expected, choice A doesn't really match with this question. Choice B, line reference B, 30 to 33 is in here. They embodied the Oxford English Dictionary's definition of authority as the power over or title to influence the opinions of others. Again, this doesn't really answer the question of what people should avoid. This just feels kind of random, so it doesn't seem good. 40 to 42, down here. Not surprisingly, perhaps some news journalists feel uneasy about this renegotiation of their authority. Well, that's kind of a setup for something, but it doesn't say anything about what the public thinks. It says about what journalists think. So it seems like it's talking to the wrong group of people for this question. We want to know what the public thinks. So that's also not looking good. Now, again, I still need to read D. I wouldn't just jump to the assumption that it's right because everything else is wrong and the chronology rule says it's going to be right. We have to be thorough here. 70 to 77. It's a long piece here. There is a growing feeling, as expressed by several of our focus group participants, that the news media should be informative rather than authoritative. The job of journalists should be to give the news as raw as it is without putting their slant on it, and people should be given sufficient information from which we would be able to form opinions of our own. A lot of should be's, and should be is a very good match for what the public thinks should be done, what should be avoided. So that line reference actually has matches with the question. So that's why I feel even better about it now. So it's probably right. Let's make sure. Let's look for a match in number 16. So personal judgments about, they should avoid personal judgments about the events being reported. Okay. That seems possible. It says in here that it should be without putting their slant on, let's use a different color, without putting their slant on it, the news should be as raw as it is. So slant matches with personal judgments. So they should avoid the slant, they should avoid a personal judgment. That seems to match with what we're talking about. Let's look at B. The report should avoid more information than is absolutely necessary. Well, it says it should be informative. It says they should be given sufficient information, but it doesn't say that we need to cut the information off at any point. It seems like, if anything, this line reference is saying more information is good, not bad. So that seems to be contradictory. Choice C, quotations from authorities on the subject matter. No, it's not talking about quotations. It says maybe that journalists shouldn't put their own slant on it, but it doesn't say anything about other people's slant, other people's opinions. So this just is not talked about. D, details that the subjects of news reports wish to keep private. So this is that public-private thing we read in one of those other line references kind of cropping up again because they know we're a little confused. But they're not saying that in this line reference. They're just saying that they should be providing information. This seems to suggest the opposite, that information should be withheld. We don't want that. So A is right because it matches with line reference D. And I get why this would be confusing. There's just a lot to juggle here. And I guess the point that's most important to make is that the question can be just as important as the line references and the choices in telling you what to look for. The chronology rule as well can be helpful. If I were unsure reading these line references, I would have guessed line reference D, and I would have guessed right. So pay attention to that. Try to keep track yourself to see why the chronology rule is valuable. It can sometimes get you 10 points for no other reason than you know how to count. That's okay. We'll take it.